Hey, everybody, this is Jacqueline, 99 Reasons Why. Welcome to my podcast. And this evening, I have a really special guest from Arizona Yang Gang. His name is Angelo Mendoza, and he's the CEO of Desert Castle Entertainment. Hi, Angelo.
Hi, Jacqueline. How's it going?
It's going. It's going. I wish I could
2020
say
well, right?
I wish I could say it was going good, but in light of what happened earlier today with the stimulus, the second round of stimulus, the negotiations getting scuppered again,
Yeah.
until after the election, that really played havoc on the markets. That played havoc on the markets because the markets are very sensitive to people not having money, and their investors were traders were it just wreaked havoc in the trading community today.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's I know that this is something that a lot of people who didn't qualify for unemployment benefits from the first round, many who didn't even get their $1,200 check yet from the first round, were in desperate need of some relief this time. And in light of yesterday's article in Washington Post, 179 million Americans, because of not having income, because of not having any money left, are facing being without utilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to the
So
viewers at home, I apologize for the bad bad camera view here. I'm unfortunately a smoker and out here just enjoying a little bit of air, so don't have the best lighting, unfortunately.
you look fine.
Well, thank you.
You look fine. You look fine, and I'm a smoker too. And you know, with 2020 as bad as it's been, the last thing somebody better get on my shit about is my cigarette smoking, because I actually did try to quit. I actually did try to quit. Didn't quite make it that far.
Yeah.
So tell
Yeah.
tell everybody. Um, I know that a lot of us who were relying on, or really needing to get that second stimulus, who couldn't qualify for anything other than the COVID check, the $1,200 COVID check, the first time, and how that's impacted you. I mean, Nancy Pelosi, one of her sticking points was that she felt that businesses, were getting too much money. But yet, I'm hearing from people that are self-employed and that own startups and that have small businesses that should have qualified for help. Were told that no, they, because of means testing in that aid package, they were actually um, not able to get anything from that. So, can you tell us what your experience has been with that, and how this is impacting you?
Yeah. So, my company did apply for the stimulus to the aid for small businesses, and we were denied because our business is still too small and we're still considered a startup by most standards. So the thing is, to get out of startup territory, you have to be making at least 50 grand monthly and show
Fifty
those kinds of numbers.
thousand, fifty
Hmm.
thousand dollars a month you have to make.
Yes, to be able to get any kind of financial aid, because you have to be able to post um, significant profits and significant losses.
So you
So
couldn't get this.
no, we could not. And a lot of startup businesses are in the same boat where if you're a startup, you're not high priority. They're looking for businesses that are larger, that have a much bigger employee pool, where they're worried about making sure that those paychecks keep coming to those employees, because their their livelihoods, not only in the form of paychecks but in form of medical, they're on the hook for. So these stimulus checks were sort of to help businesses offset those costs temporarily.
Where does that leave businesses like yours
Um,
that were cut out of getting that aid? And where does it leave your employees?
Well, for businesses like mine, we're basically left having to either put our employees on unpaid administrative leave if they want to stay with the company, or letting them go if we can't afford to keep them on board. I've been fortunate enough that my employees have been able to find other work on top of ours, but they've chosen to go on administrative leave while um, working a separate part-time job. So for us, we were sort of left retooling what we could do and how we can adapt to this COVID environment. Because another factor in whether you get the stimulus or not is whether your business is considered more or less essential and whether it's considered long-term viable. Now, because of COVID, being in the concert promotion business and only having 4 other employees, our business was not considered a major tax revenue boost for them, and they understood that you know with social distancing and everything, we might be able to have some small outdoor concerts, but we're not going to have the kind of revenue that would really be needed to make our business what they would consider viable, at least in the foreseeable future.
So in other words, this scuttling of the second round of a relief bill really.
Yeah, it didn't offer, like myself or any of my employees, much of a lifeline. So it basically means that whatever part-time job they can get, frontline work, that's putting them at high risk, unfortunately, for COVID, is all they can get. Now, um, all of us at my business have agreed that we're not going to risk doing any large-scale concerts. I know some other promoters have to try and keep their business afloat, but we feel very strongly that putting people at risk unnecessarily, especially customers that we want to make return customers, isn't going to happen if people are, sick or dead, sadly.
Right. And it's not going to happen if people don't have any money to pay
Hmm.
for to go to a concert. You know,
Yeah, and that's
179 million Americans not having the resources to keep the utilities on now that the utility shut-off bans are being lifted. I can't imagine that being good for small businesses.
no, absolutely not. And I was about to touch on that actually. Um, when it comes to small businesses and large businesses to some extent, the problem that businesses are going to be facing after COVID is how many people are surviving on their credit cards right now because they can't find sufficient enough work. With most businesses shut down, sufficient or any work in some cases, they're accruing huge amounts of debt. And at the end of the day, they're going to have to um, take care of that debt first before they can be a customer of anyone. And that means that a lot of businesses that may be expecting, oh, well, COVID's finally over, we're ready to open up shop, may find that their clientele just shrank by more than half.
There were a lot of people who initially scoffed at Andrew Yang's idea of a UBI. And we now see that if we had a UBI in place, a lot of these issues wouldn't be materializing that we're seeing. You know, um, and
Yeah,
yet,
UBI
and
would
yet,
make a huge difference. Oh,
I know it would make a difference, for us. And I mean, I don't really have a business per se. I'm basically trading a very small account to buy
mhm.
groceries to pay the bills. I'm, small account trader. I read candlesticks. That's what I do. Um, but it's all interconnected, you see, I think.
Oh yeah,
And
absolutely.
um,
Oh
when people when people, you know, the, they're, you can't just they can't just be swept under the carpet and, you know, everything's going to be fine, and they'll just pretend, you know, and kick the can down the road like they did with 2008 and they did before, where, you know, people that were permanently pushed out of the economy, you know, this is going to be so big that there is not a carpet big enough to sweep this mess under.
yeah, absolutely.
And yet there are still people that are digging their heels in and telling Yang Gang and UBI advocates in general that we are wrong-headed in what we're supporting, which is UBI, right? That
Hmm.
the reason why we're wrong-headed is because it would, quote, give money to people who don't need it. But because of how interconnected we all are,
Hmm.
you know, it doesn't seem to be a legit argument at this point. You know, I think we're
Oh
at the
no.
point where 80-90% of America needs it now.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And I would like to point out that it's it's not just the business class that need it. I mean, states right now aren't getting the tax revenue because no one's able to spend anything because so many businesses are shut down. So they're becoming more and more reliant on tax dollars from the federal government. So that cost is also adding up, and we're all just putting it on the credit card. Businesses are putting up their losses on credit cards and hoping to regain them in taxes at the end of the year. But it's not just like the our customers. You have to think about how many businesses are going to survive after this. Where are the jobs going to come from afterward? And the thing is with that frustrates me with politics is they don't understand supply and demand. Every business creates just enough supply to meet the demand of their market, so they try and stay in that equilibrium. If there is a huge drop in demand, then they're losing money on every single product that they're making past that point. So they need to reduce their own employee count and their productivity down to where they're actually staying at that equilibrium. So when they say, well, other people don't need it, like the middle class and higher up, the middle class is shrinking because most of them are the business owners that are right now struggling to stay in business. They became middle class. Many of them are mom and pop shops. When you think middle class individual, you don't think about a small, corner store down the street that, is family owned. So a lot of the middle class right now aren't making money, and they do have higher bills, but they don't have higher resources anymore. So a lot of them are just downsizing, putting things on the credit card to try and stay afloat. And it's basically just a race to the bottom all the way, through the economic stack. I would imagine the only people that might be able to weather this right now are like the mega rich, like the high end multimillionaires and billionaires, because they have the luxury of not having to spend as much. They can reduce their bills. They can just survive on what they have for now, but they're also not investing. They're not putting money into businesses. They're pulling money out to try and protect their investments. They're shifting to other things like gold and silver, other tangible items that they can use to sort of have something to fall back on until this whole thing, you know, rides itself out, because we don't know how long COVID's going to be with us. So there's multiple layers of society where it affects all parts.
one of the things that I saw, on a Twitter thread that was really disturbing was where, some people were, digging their heels in about this and saying that, well, business owners can just go get a loan. But that's not true. Credit's not has not been very easily to access for very small self-employed, ventures and small, single member LLCs and
Absolutely.
and startups like yours. Would you like to tell us about that?
Oh,
About
certainly.
how it works with trying to, acquire funding when you are, startup. What is
Yeah.
entailed?
So, unless you are a corporation, that means that you are putting out a public offering of shares in your company that can be traded. Um, for an LLC or independently owned company, you do not have access to any venture capital, which is the typical way that most corporations get started. So, what you have is, when people say just get a business loan, there's actually laws in place that prevent startups from being able to get a business loan. So, if you're a startup, business loans are off the table. The most you can get is a line of credit that is equivalent to the current um, assets or income that the individual owners can come up with. So, for example, the highest amount of credit that you can get on a personal credit card would be the highest amount of credit you can get for your business signing a personal guarantee. The only other way that you can do that is if your business has any form of collateral, you can put that up for a slightly higher credit. Um, but it also means that you have to pay that back in a designated amount of time with interest, and you're risking company assets, things that you need for your company to actually function, um, being taken back by the bank if you're unable to do so. The only other way to get startup, and this is virtually impossible now in 2020, is you would have to get what's called an angel investor. So an angel investor is a private investor that invests directly in a company for a significant portion of ownership in the company, typically about 20%. And you have about a designated amount of time for them to make their money from their investment, typically 5 years. But with a high investment in the company, that also means that they have, with that much ownership, that also means that they can dictate how the company operates because, again, they're able to more directly protect their investment that way. Um, Angel investors are not always despite the name, they're not actually like the best route to go. Usually, they want to see much higher returns than most other investors do, higher return on their investment, and you have much shorter time to be able to make up those levels of returns. If they feel like you are not doing enough to make their investment worthwhile with a large enough stake in ownership in the company, they can fire the CEO and top management for that purpose.
Wait. You can, in other words, you're telling me that you can be fired from your own
Oh yeah.
company. To be an angel investor, by the way, to be an angel investor, for people who are not in the trading community and who are not in startup community and not in the business community, to become an angel investor, you have to qualify by having at least at minimum $250,000 to be allowed to invest
Hmm.
in these. So we're talking about most in 2020 this environment. I don't see that there's a lot of people running around with that kind of money that they're going to feel confident if they have that much money, which to make one single investment. Okay, that's just to invest in one venture, right? You have to have $250,000 uh, to do that.
Yeah,
And
and you also have to have legally binding agreements, which is typically the costs of that are on the company. So you have to first get to an angel investor, which is typically done through introduction, um, or conventions. They typically don't allow for um, cold propositions and things. They get those a lot. They go in the inbox and then they go right in the spam folder. So you have to first either go to a convention where investors are meeting to be able to get those introductions, or you have to know someone that actually knows that angel investor to facilitate a meeting. And that's just to get through the door. That's not even to get heard. Once that initial contact has been made and they are willing to hear out your business plan, they have very specific asks about what the business exit strategy is for them, what the CEO and owner's exit strategy is in case they don't make their money and decide to sell off the company, for example, to recoup their losses. And also, um, just making sure that there is a legally agreement on everything that's been discussed. So everything does have to go through a business lawyer. It has to be written up very carefully. And the owner of the business is the one that has to foot the cost on that. So even if you meet an investor, even if you have everything set up, even if it all looks good, you still have to have a lawyer write up the documents. And if they don't like the stipulations, it has to go back for review. So you may be ha- incurring more costs just having to frequently meet with this lawyer.
So to rebut the people who are naysayers who are opposing UBI for, and want to make it conditional, right? What would you like to say? um I know what
I
I'd like to say, and it's two words that begin with F and end in U in 52 different languages. But I promised I'd be a good girl for the viewership and try to, have a
yeah.
you know,
Well,
I
YouTube.
mean, I'm trying to dial it back on my F bombs, but to me, it just seemed when I was looking at all of these arguments opposing, even right now, as recently as yesterday, knowing the gravity of the situation everybody is in, um and there were still people harassing Yang Gang on social media and saying how a jobs guarantee program is the only way to fix this, and UBI won't fix it because it'll give money to people who don't need it. But um I'd like to know what measures they're going to look at as and decide who needs what, because it seems to me that everybody needs it at this point.
Oh yeah, I mean, 2020 has most definitely proven that. As for a jobs guarantee, I mean, what jobs would be guaranteed,
What kind of
and what's the
jobs?
risk? Yeah, what kind of jobs would be guaranteed, and what's the risks involved? Because you also have to think: are they frontline work jobs? Are you putting yourself at a very significant risk? There's people with families that have family members that may be immune compromised. Like, can they work those jobs? So, a jobs guarantee, to me, that sounds like a lot of red tape. And in 2020, I mean, we don't have regular jobs. Most businesses are shut down for health reasons. So, what kind of jobs would people be doing? Would these be work from home jobs? And, like, how would that be done?
What kind of
As,
training would be provided?
yeah, exactly.
And what kind of skills would you need? And the other thing is, like, how fast could a jobs program be ramped up when, if people are in danger of being evicted or having their utilities cut off and then being evicted? Well, then you don't even have the basic level of economic stability required to be able to participate in having a job, whether it's a guaranteed one or not, I should think.
My
Yeah, there's
apologies for all the noise out here.
oh,
You
that's
know,
okay. Yeah, I don't hear any noise out there. You're good. You're good.
yeah, I just muted with a plane flying overhead, and
No, it's you're good.
I know my mic
I have
picks up.
space heaters running in the background. I'm, because it got really damp from the rains, so I have little tiny ceramic space heaters to knock the dampness out. So
Yeah,
that probably makes more noise in the background than the planes out there, and you
uh,
know,
yeah, I was flying right overhead. I'm sure my mic picked it up, and
no, actually, it did
yeah,
hardly heard anything.
yeah, and I got other family out here,
But
so
it just amazed me that that people were actually willing to continue being foot soldiers for this stupid vacuous argument that holds exactly no fucking water.
well, yeah. I mean, the thing is, like a federal jobs guarantee, maybe in the 70s, 80s, early 90s would have been viable. Um, but realistically speaking, a jobs guarantee doesn't necessarily work unless um, it is a job that's arbitrarily created by the federal government and you're just getting a paycheck because a job was created out of tax dollars. Um, Now, I've heard that the jobs guarantee, or at least the plan that has been proposed, is to partner with private business. Well, the problem is private businesses already hire to capacity. They don't overhire because if you got more people than you have customers, you're losing money on every single extra employee that you have. However, if demand goes up and you see a market there, you're going to increase supply to reach an equilibrium with your market anyway. So if you have more customers, jobs are going to appear just organically. That's just the way business works. No business is going to want to lose out on an opportunity to have more customers, and they're certainly not going to lose out on an opportunity to really market themselves and offer great value to those customers because you want them to come back. So the argument of a federal jobs guarantee, and I'm assuming this was in the context of UBI versus a
Yes, this
jobs
is in the
guarantee.
context of UBI, of federal jobs guarantee versus UBI, and there's some people that were really being very obnoxious on Twitter lately. That,
Yeah.
um,
So
yeah, that were
um,
they were insisting that jobs guarantee, no UBI, because UBI would give money to people who they think don't need it. And I don't know how anyone can make a determination at this point who doesn't need it. But the point in my mind that really sticks with me is the concept of a social floor through which no one can fall isn't predicated upon need. It's predicated upon so we never need. So we don't
exactly.
need. So we don't have to ever have a situation where somebody is
Hmm.
left having to beg for their life.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, with a federal jobs guarantee versus a UBI in that context, um, a UBI is always going to win because it's going to create those jobs organically just through virtue of more people having money to be able to be customers of businesses. To give you an example, back in 2019, and I haven't looked at the stats for 2020, I've been kind of afraid to, but in 2019, the middle class only comprised 50% of the population. If you add in the 1% top earners, that's 51% of the population. Now, every business is going to be marketing at that 51%. That is the entire pool that is propping up every business. So that leaves 49% of the population living paycheck to paycheck where they can't afford to actually be able to purchase items or purchase services. You know, maybe if they saved up enough, or if they're if they want to go into debt, unfortunately, like they might enjoy going out to a movie or going out to a concert or something, if it's a small enough debt that they can repay over time. But in the context of living paycheck to paycheck, it's not going to be that they're going to be frequent customers. those aren't the repeat customers that you're going to get. They're a customer that comes in once in a great while, and then you might not see them for a few months or a year or more. Not because your products or services are bad, but because they simply can't afford to frequent your business. They can't afford to, purchase these products or services. These are luxuries to them that are different from survival needs. And most people are going to secure their survival needs first and then see what they have left over to spend on things that they want or need or try to save if they can.
Now,
So,
that's what some of these people were arguing. They were saying, well, with UBI, there will be always somebody who gets pushed down to the floor and they'll never have more than that UBI. But my argument has always been, but right now we don't even have that fucking floor. Excuse my French. Um, we
yeah,
don't have that floor. It's like you're pushed down, 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 down. And um, I remember through the crash of '08, there were 94 million working age Americans that were in their middle aged years that were pushed out of the economy. They were not reabsorbed when the economy rebounded,
yeah,
largely due to age discrimination being part of it. But
and that happened before. Back in the 1960s and 70s, when a lot of the mines closed down in these mining towns, the towns never recovered. They, there's many rural towns all over the United States that are ghost towns and um, basically like retirement areas because any family, any young children and stuff that grow up in those towns leave to be able to find opportunities for jobs and careers. So it really is a pattern where every time there's a major shift in the economy, there's a certain percentage of the working force that drops off that's never able to find work again. They often go on to Social Security disability if they can, SSDI,
or the
or
underground economy.
the underground economy, you know, or they find areas in gig work and temp work, but they're never really reabsorbed properly into the economy anymore. Whatever middle class job that they had, for example, the mines were a middle class job. Those jobs are gone forever. And when there's a major shift like that, there's always going to be people that are pushed out of the economy that are never able to rebound.
And that's
And
adding to people who had already been pushed out, who were pushed out before that, who were what we call from the permanent underclass, the people who never got chances for jobs, people like, human trafficking survivors who were shut out from any and all jobs due to prostitution records that weren't expunged until, they found a pro bono lawyer willing to help them when they were in their 40s to expunge, a prostitution record that they incurred when they were 12 or 13 years old when they, as a result of being trafficked. And that's just one example. That's speaking from a community that I'm unfortunately a member of
yeah,
and have very,
mhm,
a lot of knowledge in, and, I'm a survivor leader in. And what I've seen over the years, and this is where we're digging up and, bringing up that hidden data, lifting that is really important because before the new poor, what we call the new poor, the people that were pushed out of those mining jobs and the foundry jobs and the textile mill jobs and you know um the jobs that were middle class before COVID hit. This is before COVID. um
mhm,
the people that were pushed out joined a pool of already permanently poor people, including all the poor single mothers that were thrown off of welfare with welfare reform, whether or not they were able to get jobs. And there was nobody in the government, nobody, in the government was keeping tabs on whether or not those, those women got jobs. Many of them didn't,
yeah,
and many
and
of them did not. So this was a pool that has been getting bigger and bigger and bigger,
mhm,
encompassing more and more people who've been permanently pushed out. And yet, for decades, the news media, swept it under the rug, ignored it.
Yeah.
Talking heads denied the truth and said, well, if you're poor, if you're not able to get a job, it's your own fault. You must have done something wrong. You must have not gotten an education. You must have not tried hard enough.
Yeah, that's the American myth. They call it the American dream, and I believe, to quote comedian George Carlin,
You have
you know why they call it the American dream?
to be asleep.
You have to be asleep to believe it. Yep.
Yeah. And
And
yeah,
and
so
that's
it's
true.
like there's this pool, and this is where a lot of this hidden, data needs to come from, because number one, Andrew Yang nailed the problem. I don't know if he's aware of deeply how deep the problem is. I mean, when you come from, and I had this unique experience of coming from, that, that permanent underclass. For people who don't know, I earned a degree while homeless. I escaped my trafficking situation in 1984 at the age of 17 with no help from the society that let that happen to me as a 12-year-old child, mind you. And I had to make up for the basic education that my traffickers didn't let me have. And I had to try to, rebuild my life, literally, without even the benefit of family to go to turn to move in with, to for help and support, because losing my family, being orphaned, is how I got trafficked. And
Yeah.
when I went and eventually did get my GED, and then I went from there to earn a degree. I earned a math degree, and I don't know if people can see, it's hanging on the wall above my fireplace mantelpiece back there, behind my chair, all the way back there. That math degree failed to open a single door, even though I graduated with good grades. And really, to do that, to accomplish that kind of a feat, as a dyslexic, as a woman who's homeless, as somebody who had been traumatized to the degree of a combat vet, it's not a small feat. And yet the dominant narrative in this country was, if you were poor and you couldn't get a job, it was somehow your fault. There was enough jobs to go around for everybody. No excuse for being poor. There was enough to go around for everybody, and should have worked. Or if it didn't work, it was that you didn't get an education, you didn't do the right things, you didn't make the right choices.
Yeah, which is a myth. I mean, realistically speaking, some of the highest paying jobs in the country right now are construction jobs. Um, and I have a really hard time picturing someone like you, going out plastering drywall, or, climbing scaffolding, and, holding up I-beams. That doesn't seem like a job that you would want or would even be able to do without,
I, I
putting your
actually
health at risk.
I actually did work as a plasterer briefly for 2 years,
Mm.
thanks to the push for the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission pushing unions to accept women in the skilled trades unions. I did luck out and get in. I got
Yeah,
taken out of that job, though, when an uninsured driver T-boned me one morning when I was on my way to work, and I wound up with smashed knees and a back that was broken in a couple places, and I had to be
yeah,
removed from my vehicle with jaws of life. I mean, this lady, and she wasn't insured. She just didn't
mm.
see the red light, and bam, T-boned me that hard.
And I
And
mean, I'm not saying that women can't do construction work or things like that. You
well,
know,
limitations. I mean, there's not all construction jobs are, doable for women, but some are.
yeah.
And
What I'm saying is, those types of jobs are not sustainable for many, many people, because
we're not.
the physical demands of a construction job, you have to be in peak health and in peak fitness.
Oh yeah.
Um,
When I was in my early 20s, I mean, yeah, I could do that, but it wasn't something I wanted to do all my life. It was something that I was doing to earn enough income to stabilize my life, so that I could then transition to something else. And what I found was, like, barriers on top of barriers on top of barriers, um, due to the stigmatization and of, number one, coming from poverty, that was bad enough. Two, being, tarnished from being a human trafficking survivor, being stigmatized for that. And, that's just one subgroup of the population. There's so many others, except I tend to speak about what I have direct knowledge of from personal experience, because speaking for other people can kind of get you in, a little bit of shit. So I
And
like to let other people speak from their experiences. But what I've seen is that there's this, over the decades, this pool of a permanently excluded class that has been perpetually ignored. And I don't even think Andrew Yang was aware of just how big this is. We're talking about a significantly growing chunk of the population that has been growing for decades. And yet, and yet, prior politicians never even mentioned the word poor or poverty once.
no, absolutely not.
And I
The
think
th-
Obama did once, except it was only in connection with um, people. The worst off you could be was a minimum wage worker. And it's like, no, there's actually a burgeoning underclass that's worse off than a minimum wage worker. There are people who were shut out of even those jobs.
and the other thing is with minimum wage workers is, you know, those jobs aren't necessarily going to be stable. Um, for example,
They were never enough to live on anyway. They were never,
yeah,
those
but
were typically jobs that if you were a high school senior, you would do that job.
yeah, well, it's like, okay, perfect example. Walmart years ago used to have wall-to-wall cash registers. You could go in there and typically they'd have like a small section of just maybe a few self-checkouts if you were in a real hurry, but for the most part, you had to go through a register. Now it is wall-to-wall self-checkouts with, if you're lucky, maybe one register open out of the entire store. And we're talking like the big Walmart supercenters, the
That's
ones with high traffic.
That's how it is where we live. We have two Walmart supercenters where we live that went, at practically full automation like that. The jobs, looking for a live body in the store. Good luck with that.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to find people that are still maybe working in the back, putting stock on the shelves and stuff like that. But it's it's a more significantly reduced role now. From what I understand, with Walmart, also, um, there used to be a team of people that would actually have to take stock of what they had in the back, what was being spent, what wasn't. And in this day and age now, that's not the case. They're actually at a point where most of the stuff is ordered by AI. The AI determines what was shipped in and how much product was sold via the registers, and then it automatically reorders um, products. So a lot of businesses are doing that actually. Um, Another member of the Yang Gang that I'm sure you're familiar with, Fred the Felon,
Hmm.
he was able to automate away his dispatch using AI that's more efficient.
Well, that's
He's
okay.
able to be out on the road more. He's able to actually have make the most of the opportunities that he has. But like AI and automation that Andrew Yang was talking about is absolutely there. And with COVID, it's sort of it's changed things a bit where human interaction is not desirable in businesses, especially any kind of food prep. There's a lot of companies coming up right now that are trying to design machines to be able to handle food prep for fast food places that, those minimum wage jobs may be going away very soon just because machines can't get diseases, and as long as they're kept sterile, they're not going to create a dangerous environment for people. And food being a very essential thing, especially during, you know, the lockdown where being able to get food at the stores was more of a luxury. Um, Whereas McDonald's has their own supply chains. There's a lot of
McDonald's
people that
owns
would,
food.
Yeah, McDonald's has their own food supply chains. I mean, you could not find.
I'm being very facetious because
I know, but I mean, like, you couldn't find, you know, if you were lucky, a can of beans and a steak at a Walmart. I mean, everything was gone during the first half of this. The shelves were empty, like the store had just barely been installed. Clean, completely empty, aisle to aisle. So a lot of people were stockpiling, but the problem is a lot of people went without too. So they had no other choice but to look at fast food as an option. Now, if you're on one of the um, social safety net programs like uh, food
and
stamps, for example,
that's using that word loosely,
yeah, loosely, but
very loose.
for example, food stamps. Um, Perfect example of this. Food stamps does not allow you to buy fast food. Excuse me. You can only buy foods that are cold. You have to make yourself. You cannot buy anything that's been pre-made. So it does limit options, and that is actually, for many people that were on food stamps that couldn't buy food at the regular stores because no stores um, had a lot left. They were able to buy maybe whatever was left on the shelves if they could find anything. That put them at significant risk, versus being able to spend a couple bucks at, a local fast food place and be able to get dinner for the night.
Yeah, and one of the other things too is that a lot of people were suffering economically before this COVID mess hit and had lost, had their vehicles repossessed. They don't have a car. Where I live, Erie County, Pennsylvania. Okay. There isn't much by the way of transport. Um, if you couldn't get to, if you could not get to the store to actually use your EBT card, your food stamp card to buy food, you were SOL if you didn't have transportation to get there. Because Instacart, which does grocery delivery, which during the height of the lockdowns in my state, which the governor of my state didn't fuck around. Um, you couldn't use your food stamps. So the first round of COVID relief was to bolster food stamp benefits, but the people who were the poorest, who didn't even have a car to get to the damn Walmart with, or any other store for that matter,
Yeah.
they had food stamps they could not use because Instacart didn't accept them. And Amazon only just started accepting food stamps on that card, except there's only certain types of foods that you can use. You can use it for. And all the foods, at least in my state, in Pennsylvania, that you can get using the food stamp card on Amazon Prime and our Amazon Pantry are foods that you cannot have if you're diabetic.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
So
No,
in your case, it failed you completely because you couldn't get food at your local, store,
no.
and
I had
you
to beg
couldn't.
for my life from the freaking public at large. And if it wasn't for friends in Yang Gang and for, from getting a micro grant from Humanity Forward and from some really, wonderful, caring angels. I mean angels in the literal sense in Yang Gang, who cared enough to help. I'd be dead because you can't take insulin without food, or
Yeah.
you'll go into a coma.
Oh
Right?
yeah, I have many family that are diabetic, and I know,
It's like I make an income trading, but I'm trading with scraps. I don't make enough income to be even above poverty. It's like
yeah,
I'm surviving, and my husband gets Social Security retirement. He's a disabled senior citizen. He's 24 years older than me. Yes, he robbed the cradle. um,
so
but it really I spent I don't know how many hours reaching out to my state Congress people who were completely dismissive and unresponsive to this. They had literally no sense of urgency to resolve that issue. And it made me angry because I'm thinking, you know, you know, shove these stupid programs up your ass. They're
Yeah.
not
So
helpful. Give
yeah,
everybody money.
exactly, exactly. And I actually wanted to ask you a question, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
So, you're a trader. You're making your money, um, trading a little bit at a time on, you know, stocks or options or different
One
stuff like
put
that,
or one
futures.
call at a time. I have a cash account because I have less than $25,000, which means I'm subject to the pattern day trade rule if I have margin on my account. Now,
Mm,
what that means is that there's a lot of trading strategies that are not available to me with a cash account. I can't do spreads. I can't do short selling. In other words, there's like 75% of the market and the strategies to trade in a particular given set of market conditions that are not available to me. You
So
know,
that sounds
but
like just about every business.
yeah,
You have a very limited pool, and
very limited.
that's your part of the market that you're trying to,
And it's been
capitalize on.
a very, very painstakingly slow process, especially the past, couple of weeks. It's been this Texas two-step. I get a little bit ahead, and then boom, I turn around like today when the SPY tanked. I mean, I get up from my desk. I just put on a trade for a Baidu call, a call on Baidu, because the
Hmm.
chart setup was perfect this morning. Well, actually, this afternoon. I waited till the afternoon part to do the trade because the way the markets have been behaving lately, I thought it would be a safer route for me to go to just wait till around after 12 noon to look and see what the charts were looking like. Um, so I saw, oh, wow, Baidu, good setup here. Jumped on a call, an at the money call, which meant I had a 50, delta, 0.5. I know that's probably Greek. That is actually Greek. I'm talking Greek. Yeah, delta option, option Greeks. I trade derivatives. That's what I trade. Options are a derivative, and that's what I trade.
Okay.
But I get up. I think okay. I'm needing like my second cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And this is
2020.
Jacqueline size cup of coffee. You can see it's a I don't know if you can see it's
Yeah. That's about the size of a coffee I usually start with in the morning.
and it's
Um,
like I needed my second cup, so it's like okay, well my Baidu call's going good. I
mhm,
was at a so far was at a $62 profit. It's like okay, it's going up now with options, due to the leverage that they have, you
mhm,
know. They tend to go up a lot. When they move up or when they move down, depending on the direction that you're playing, what you need is direction in the market.
mhm.
Okay, in order to make money with options. I mean, you can do calendar spreads, you can do horizontal spreads, but that's kind of a pain in the ass. You don't make as much money and it's a pain in the ass. And spreads are off limits when you don't have a margin account anyway. So it's like I'm dealing with just being able to buy puts and calls,
Yeah.
long positions. So I was long on a Baidu call that was at the money, you know, 24 days out to expiration, So then I had, good turnaround time because that's, you know,
Yeah.
options are a wasting asset. I get up, I go into the kitchen to hit the button on my coffee pot, and we're talking about 15 feet that way.
Mm,
15 feet that way to where the coffee pot is, where the little green button that says start brew or whatever. I don't know, start brew. Anyway, it's the button you hit to make your coffee.
yeah.
I hit the button and I come right back because my cup was here on my desk.
Mhm.
And I looked and I saw my trade had gone from a $62 profit to a $90 loss. And I'm like, what in the cinnamon toast
Whoa.
box? So I'm looking immediately. There was nothing in that would have indicated this. There was no, it was just like a sudden, it was slowly going up and then all of a sudden so
It just tanked. And
I looked and then I quickly switched my charts to bring up the SPY, you know, and sure enough, the SPY had already significantly tanked. So the SPY had tanked so quickly and so fast within the time of less than a minute. that it dragged my Baidu call down. It dragged everybody else down too. Tesla got dragged down. Everything got dragged down. So I quick got out of my Baidu call and I jumped on a SPY put. Of course, the SPY drop was already well in progress, so I didn't get to, a put, by the way, is the option that you buy when you want to profit off the market going down. So that's how I was able to turn a $90 loss into only a $42 loss. But it was just, this was out of nowhere. So
Yeah.
I bring up on my Thinkorswim platform, I bring up the Market Watch News, and I see Mitch McConnell not willing to, like Nancy Pelosi had, I guess, apparently been willing to make a concession of $800 billion on what the Democrat plan was for a stimulus relief. And Mitch
One moment, I
McConnell
gotta
just
plug in. Go ahead. I just have to plug in real quick.
Mitch McConnell wasn't willing to budge. And Donald Trump issued an order saying he was halting all negotiations for a second round of stimulus, fiscal assistance until after the election.
Oh, that's a terrible idea.
And that is what happened. So the markets reacted to this. And I saw this in real time. We're talking about in under a minute to go push a button on a coffee pot.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, oh, great. Got my Baidu call. I'm in my trade. I can take a minute to go, start my brew, come back for my cup. The last thing I expected was to see that. It was that quick. That is how quick and how violently the market reacted to the news that there wasn't going to be any stimulus at all. That, and there was chatter all over the trading community, like, this is going to be the motherlode of market crashes because of the things that you were describing, where people were, in hock up to the nines.
Yeah.
On credit card debt, that people living off of credit cards because they don't have an income. And
so the reason why I'd asked about the about trading is also because if you could imagine, as more businesses gain more customers from UBI, that would also increase their stock price significantly. So you as a trader, I'm sure it doesn't take much imagination to think like what you would do and how you would be able to benefit from, the whole market sort of going on a huge upswing.
Oh my God. Well, the thing is that when you're a trader, you can benefit on the market going in either direction. Except I wasn't in front of the screen when it unexpectedly, and it happened so fast that there was no way to react and hit on that. I mean, I'm pretty fast. I'm pretty fast on, I have my hotkeys set up for SPY drops. I mean, but those blow so fast, they'll blow right through your limits. If you have limits on your orders, it'll blow right through your limits. Like, and that's what happened. It was such a quick drop that a lot of people were, got caught in that. Now, how like I said, I was able to be quick and grab the SPY put and recoup, claw back half of the loss there. But how UBI would help is with the stability, with people in, who are, let's say, better financially situated than me, upper middle class. They're buying Apple stock. This is what Stephanie Kelton, who was the former policy advisor to Bernie Sanders, said. It wouldn't be fair to give a UBI because the middle class and the rich will be able to afford to buy shares of Apple stock while the poor will have to eat their apples. And I'm sitting there laughing at her thinking, lady, I trade to buy groceries and pay my electric. You think, what do you think? Do you think the markets there's an entire trading community full of people just like me who are taking little bits of money just to stretch it to make it go a little further by trading derivatives. They're trading derivatives. I mean, there's different kinds of derivatives. The derivatives market is bigger than the equities market. I mean, big. The derivatives market is fucking huge. The advantage to trading derivatives is that you don't have a very high barrier as far as what you need to have money wise to begin trading. You don't have to have tens of thousands of dollars, you know? So,
Yeah.
how people really can benefit from that is um, if they are able to sock a grand away to start trading. Okay, the rich and the middle class are buying Apple stock. Great. You know what Apple does when it goes up? It drags the SPY with it. The Apple is one of the fangs. The fangs are Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google. Those are the big, the tech bellwethers. And when one of them, just one of them, moves, it drags the entire SPY index with it, even though it trades on the Q, which is the NASDAQ, the Q, the triple Q's, but
And
it drags the SPY with it. And it's like, you know what? Great. Buy that Apple stock because I want to buy an Apple call, or maybe I'll just buy a call on the SPY because I know the SPY is going to get, snagged up with it, because that 1 or 2% profit you make on your Apple stock, let me tell you what the percentage of profit is for an options holder, whether it's a call on the SPY or a call on the Apple stock itself. That 1 to 2% move in the stock, 50% move in the derivative that's attached to it. Now, this is why, now you know why I trade these things, right? So, I mean, now leverage can bite in the ass. I mean, I kind of got nipped in the butt a little bit today with what happened with that foolishness with the stimulus negotiations being scuttled, but the UBI, and the markets itself, those are vehicles that, should be available to everybody to use. And I can't see where all this acrimony is coming from people who say, well, we can't have a UBI because the middle class and the rich will use that money to buy Apple stock. And it's like, I want them to buy Apple stock.
yeah, where's the problem?
I'm a derivatives trader. Please move that shit. I need a couple of 50% fucking moonshots. Okay.
Well, think about this for a moment. Just a thought experiment. So imagine we get a UBI. Now you have people at the top that are saying, well, I don't really feel like spending a lot, but I have this money coming in. I know it's a recurring check, so I feel confident at least investing that. So they, people at the top invest in Apple. Now you have people that are saying, well, I need to be able to keep in contact with family. I need to be able to hop on Zoom and other things. They start buying Apple products because now they can afford them. So you
Yes.
have investors buying and you have people buying the product, both pushing the stock price up. What would that mean for you as a trader?
Well, it means that I will be able to, with cash, come up with the 55 grand I need to cover the cost. This was the quote that contractors gave me, by the way, for the slate roof replacement that my 112-year-old house needs, which is why all my stuff is crammed downstairs into the living room, because it literally rains in my bedroom, okay, and upstairs, right? So what it would mean for me is being able to whip out my TD Ameritrade debit card and pay in fucking cash to have that roof fixed, replaced. It would mean being able to call up Champion Ford and say, you know what, I want that tricked out sorry, I'm a Ford woman, right?
Chevy guy myself, but
I
to each their own.
Hey, you know what? You have my condolences. I'm a Ford woman. um, I would be able to call up Champion Ford. I would be able to call up Champion Ford because right now my husband and I don't have a vehicle. You know what I'd be able to do? Buy a vehicle. You know what else that means? That means I would also be able to have the ability to take better care of my health and manage my diabetes better, because where I live, there isn't much public transportation, and I need to go to diabetic specialists. I need to go for podiatry care for my feet, diabetic, very important. I need
Oh
to go
yeah.
for vision, because I had some vision loss as a result of diabetic complication. I have to see an endocrinologist, you know, and all these, I can't do that without a car, without a vehicle, right? And on top of that, I can't get to the Y and exercise. Now, although I suffered some horrific injuries earlier in life, some of the most violent ones when I was trafficked as a homeless youth, but getting lunched in a car accident caused by somebody blowing a red light going to a senior breakfast, that didn't do me any favors, having to be pulled out of my Dodge Ram Charger by a jaws of life. That really did not do me any favors. So there's
Oh
one
no.
exercise I can do if I don't smoke my lungs out to death and
Yeah,
make that
you and me both,
impossible. That's
sadly.
that one exercise is swimming. I mean, I love to swim,
Hmm.
but guess what? In order to go, whether it's going to Lake Erie, okay, because I don't care, I'll swim in the lake. You know, I'd rather go swim at the Y though, because in the lake they've got like there's things that you have to be careful of with your feet.
Yeah.
Stepping on stuff, and
Oh
like
yeah.
there's a lot of
Plus,
sharp debris.
microbes, etc.
Yeah, because
Things that you don't
diabetics
want
don't
to.
heal, and a sore or a problem on the foot, whether it's a fungus infection or whether it's stepping on a sharp piece of debris, if that is not kept under control, you can wind up with a septic infection that results in amputation, you
Yeah.
know? So it's like managing my diabetes is important. I'd be able to, I would be able to do that. I would be able to go to the Y, or go to the lake. I actually have special aqua shoes that I wear specifically for going swimming, so that I'm not ever in bare feet. I'm never in bare feet because of that reason, because I have problems with my feet, and they cannot prescribe for me the only medicine that has been proven to work on specific foot problems, because I'm diabetic and can't have the medicine.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, managing something like that, it's not a cheap disease. There's foods that everyday, ordinary foods that most people take for granted that I can't have: pasta, beans, rice, regular bread is stuff that I can't have. I have to eat a lot of lean meats, a lot of dairy, and how I get my vitamin C is I have to eat a lot of bell peppers. I have to limit my citrus, because there's most fruits I can no longer have. I can have cherries, I can have blackberries, I can have blueberries, some strawberries, but I don't like strawberries that much. But like watermelon, too much sugar, out of the question.
Oh yeah. My
I mean, there's a lot of foods that you can't have when you're diabetic, and having that UBI makes a world of difference as far as quality of life. So it's not just being able to pay for the necessities of food, it's also being able to have the basic floor, so that if I have an entire week or an entire month of trades not working out for me, I don't have to worry about withdrawing money out of my trading account during a drawdown period, because
yeah.
this
When
is key. This is key.
hmm
Zero doesn't compound upwards. In order to be able to successfully unpoor myself, I need to get above that,
pattern day trade rule.
that pattern day trade rule, and be able to do that, so that I can actually, when I have trades that are profitable, that make up for the ones that don't work out, that I'm actually able to, without diminishing the account balance, I'm actually able to pay for food. I don't have to beg for help. I don't have to, I don't have to use food stamps. I don't have to beg for help with money for an Uber to go to a medical appointment or go for my blood work. I mean, people that cheerlead these programs and diss on UBI and rag on small businesses, and say, well, if you don't have a lot of money, or you couldn't go into a bank and get a loan, you shouldn't have a business. and these are people that call themselves progressives. Number one, I don't think they know exactly what is involved with trying to get help from these programs that, number one, don't help you.
Oh yeah,
Number
most of the
two,
time.
and number two, punish you when you start to, lift yourself up a little bit, where you're almost out of, getting, working your way up out of poverty. You're smack back down with the benefits cliff.
Oh yeah,
And,
like I wanted
and
to mention,
yeah,
for example, with SSI, having had been on that in the past, SSI has a $2,000 total assets limit. You
oh, yeah,
cannot own anything over $2,000 without losing all of your benefits. And the real kicker is not only do they kick you off your benefits, you have to pay them back for the benefits they doled out earlier in the year.
oh, yeah,
So
yep,
you're on the hook for the help that they gave you because you got just far enough that you were no longer in need of that help.
yeah. And in my case, I actually do qualify medically wise for SSI, which is a $700 and some dollar a month check. Problem. It's because it's means tested. My husband, my 78-year-old husband, his $1,037 a month Social Security retirement check pegs me as too rich. I would have to get a divorce, move out of the marital home, and I don't know where the hell I'd go live. I have no living family that could take me in. I have no, when you're isolated without a car, I don't even have friends I could go stay with for the 2-year duration, and that's minimum. Um, until I get a determination of maybe getting an SSI award that a lawyer would grab a third of. And on top of that, it's a $700 a month, and I would have to go and recertify for this every year. So basically, when people are ragging on, well, we can't give money to everybody, we should only give it to the poor. What they are doing is they are defending an arcane, draconian, paternalistic, and very fucking patriarchal obsolete system, which is about as useless as tits on a boar hog. I'm not on, I would rather see everybody get the money, get money, because putting the floor underneath everyone's feet is where this is at. And yeah, we're going to wrap this up. So, Angelo, last things you want to say?
I just wanted to thank you for having me on your show. This has been an absolutely wonderful conversation, and I'm hoping to be back on later. I think that it is important that we talk about these things, that we talk about the fact that this isn't an ideal situation for business, and it's not an ideal situation for people in general,
No,
um, because businesses may be affected, and that's one part of it, but there's a human aspect to it. And I think my lasting message I want to put out is, you know, businesses aren't the economy. We are offering a service to people that want to buy it. That is all. People are the economy. If no one is around to buy anything, there is no economy. And
that's
that's
right.
that's the parting message I'd like to, send to your viewers.
Two sides of a transaction. You can't have a market without buyers and sellers. If you're selling something, it doesn't matter how cheap it is if people don't have any money. And I'd like to see
Absolutely.
middle class people buy Apple stock, please. I'd like to make a 50% profit on an on a spy call or an Apple call, please. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on, Jacqueline.
Yep.